The crowd had barely settled into their seats when the first low hum of anticipation rippled through the arena. It wasn't just another fight night, it was something different. You could feel it in the undercurrent of whispers, the restless energy passing from one fan to the next. A silent understanding was spreading. Tonight could be the beginning of a legacy or the end of one. In one corner stood Josh Emmett, a fighter forged in grit and hardened by battles that left more than just scars. They etched stories into his name. And in the other corner, a storm quietly brewing. Lerone Murphy, unbeaten, unshaken, and carrying with him the kind of confidence that can't be taught, only earned. Josh Emmett isn't the kind of fighter who waits for the storm to pass. He walks straight into it, with a right hand that shattered jaws and silenced critics. Emmett has never relied on hype or headlines. He's the definition of persistence, fighting through injuries, setbacks, and moments where most would have folded. But here's the twist. As much as Emmett has proven time and again that he belongs among the elite, there's always been that lingering question. Can he break through the ceiling, or is he destined to hover just beneath the top tier? That's where Lerone Murphy enters, not as an underdog, but as a mystery wrapped in calm precision and dangerous silence. Murphy's story doesn't read like your typical rise through the ranks. He's unbeaten, yes, but what sets him apart is how effortless he makes it look. Each performance isn't just a win. It's a calculated display of discipline, patience, and lethal timing. But for all this success, there's a shadow that follows him, a narrative he's desperate to shake, that he hasn't faced a real test yet, that maybe, just maybe, his clean record hides unanswered questions. Emmett, battle-worn and fearless, might just be the one to ask those questions in ways no one else has dared. As the matchup was announced, analysts debated and fans picked sides, but there was one shared reaction. This wasn't just a fight, it was a collision of paths. Emmett, known for making fights ugly and unforgettable, thrives in chaos. He drags opponents into his world, where every exchange is dangerous, and every second is a chance to end it all. Murphy, on the other hand, operates like a sniper, methodical, calm, and always 2 steps ahead. The stylistic contrast alone was enough to spark intrigue, but it's the stakes that made this matchup unmissable. For Emmett, this could be his final charge toward a title shot, a last stand that demands everything he has left. He's tasted the edge of contention before, only to be pushed back by the cruel nature of this sport. He's not just fighting Murphy. He's fighting time, doubt, and the creeping fear that windows close faster than they open. Every punch he throws isn't just about scoring points. It's about proving that his name still belongs in the title conversation. Murphy, meanwhile, is stepping into uncharted territory. It's one thing to remain undefeated against rising talents. It's another to walk into the fire with a proven veteran who doesn't blink. The questions around Murphy aren't just about skill. They're about pressure. How will he respond when he's hit harder than he's ever been? When the canvas shakes beneath him and the crowd smells blood? There's no blueprint for what he's walking into. Emmett is not a puzzle easily solved. He's a riddle written in bruises and broken noses. What adds another layer of tension is the setting. A card stacked with fireworks, with their bout positioned to either steal the show or get swallowed in the madness. Both fighters know what's at stake. One win could mean a meteoric rise, a spot on the main stage. A loss, it doesn't just stall momentum. It could derail years of work. For Emmett, a setback at this stage might close the book on title hopes. For Murphy, it could shake the foundation of his ascent and open the door to all those doubts he's fought so hard to silence. There's something poetic about the way these two paths are intersecting. Emmett's story is about resilience, power, and grit. Murphy's is about timing, potential, and the unknown. Together, they're crafting a narrative that feels almost cinematic. Two men on opposite ends of their journey, yet standing face to face with everything to lose. And while fans may cheer, boo, or sit silently with nervous anticipation, one thing is certain: when the cage door shuts, all the talk ends. In the quiet moments before the bell, when both men lock eyes for the final time before the storm, the question will hang heavy in the air. Who breaks first? Will Emmett's experience overwhelm the rising star, or will Murphy's unshakable composure lead him through the fire untouched? As the referee gives final instructions, neither man flinches. They've heard it all, seen it all. Now it's just about proving it. The first punch hasn't even been thrown, and already the tension is unbearable. Every fan watching knows they're about to witness something that could change the trajectory of two careers. But what no one knows Not the analysts, not the coaches, not even the fighters themselves, is what happens when an immovable force meets something we haven't quite defined yet. Murphy's never faced a storm like Emmett, and Emmett's never had to silence a question mark this dangerous. The moment the cage door latched shut behind them, the noise outside seemed to blur into the background, as if the rest of the world knew something important was about to unfold. Josh Emmett circled with a narrow gaze, his every movement deliberate, like a man who'd been here too many times to flinch. But across from him, Lerone Murphy didn't play the role expected of him. No nervous pacing, no rookie jitters, just a laser focus that almost looked unnatural for someone stepping into the biggest test of his career. And that's when things started to feel different. There was something about Murphy's demeanor that didn't match the script everyone else had been reading from. Early exchanges were cautious, measured, both men trading feints and flickers, waiting to find a crack. Then Emmett lunged forward with the kind of overhand right that had changed careers in the past, but it missed by an inch. Murphy didn't retreat. He countered. Not with wildness, but with calm precision, clipping Emmett just enough to let him know he wasn't going to be bullied. It wasn't just about dodging danger. It was about showing Emmett that this fight wasn't going to follow his usual rhythm. And in that moment, something shifted. The veteran realized he wasn't facing a prospect anymore. He was locked in with someone who didn't just want to win, but was prepared to dissect him in real time. There's a different kind of tension that builds when the unexpected begins to take shape. Emmett, who thrives in gritty wars, was being pulled into a game of angles and traps. Murphy's footwork was eerily smooth, his raids on Emmett's setups almost too sharp. It was as if he'd studied every frame of Emmett's past wars, and wasn't just reacting. He was anticipating. The commentators began murmuring that something wasn't adding up. How was this young contender, relatively untested against top-tier pressure, navigating the storm with such control? But then came the surprise that no one in the building saw coming. Late in the second round, after a brief clinch against the cage, Emmett created space and fired a vicious elbow. One of those unpredictable, fight-changing strikes he's known for. It landed flush. Murphy's legs buckled. The crowd gasped. For a split second, it looked like everything was unraveling. But instead of falling, Murphy grabbed Emmett's waist and pulled him into a scramble. One he somehow won. And as they returned to their feet, the cameras caught something strange. Murphy was smiling. Not the smile of a man relieved to have survived. It was something else. Calculated. Confident. Almost as if he had expected to be tested like that, and was now operating on a different level entirely. From that moment forward, the fight's dynamic changed again. Emmett turned up the pressure. Chasing the knockdown, he nearly landed. But Murphy didn't retreat into survival mode. He fired back with knees in the clinch, short hooks off the break, and a jab that started to find a home far too often. The crowd, once leaning into Emmett's grit, now sat somewhere between stunned and intrigued. Murphy wasn't just surviving anymore. He was shifting the tempo. Back in his corner between rounds, Emmett's team could be heard urging urgency. Their voices louder, tenser than before. This wasn't the usual plan. The fight was slipping into deeper waters, and the man that we're trying to drown was still swimming calmly. Emmett had seen everything before. Pressure fighters, submission artists, counter-strikers. But Murphy's ability to remain composed under fire was starting to feel unsettling. And then, without warning, the twist arrived. In the third round, as Emmett lunged forward looking to close distance, Murphy didn't circle out or clinch. He planted his feet and threw a spinning elbow. Fast, vicious, and completely out of character for his usual approach. It missed, but just barely. The message was clear. Murphy wasn't just here to survive or edge out a decision. He was here to leave a mark. That moment, wild as it was, changed something. Emmett hesitated, only for a breath. But in high-level fights like this, a single moment of hesitation can feel like a scream. Now both men knew the truth. This wasn't just a clash of styles. It was a battle of evolving identities. Emmett, the iron-willed veteran known for dragging opponents into deep water, was being forced to think twice, to adapt in real time. And Murphy, long seen as a technical outfighter, was revealing a darker layer. One with risk, aggression, and a willingness to stand and trade when the moment called for it. The undercurrents of the fight began to shift again, and so did the subplots. Questions started to swirl among fans and pundits watching live. Had Emmett waited too long to make his move? Was Murphy's game plan more calculated than anyone expected? Were we witnessing a breakout moment not just for a fighter, but for a future contender stepping into full bloom? Each exchange now felt heavier, not because of damage alone, but because of what they meant. Emmett's shots, though powerful, were beginning to come from deeper wells of energy. Murphy's counters, though sharp, hinted at a man taking bigger risks as the pace increased. And yet, neither seemed ready to give an inch. The stakes, already high, were now boiling over. Title implications loomed. Legacy implications crept in. And both men seemed aware that whoever blinked next wouldn't just lose the round. They'd lose the story that was being written in real time. Sweat, blood, and breath mixed in the cage as time ticked towards something pivotal. But what neither corner could predict, what no one could have scripted, was that the real turning point wasn't going to come from a strike or a takedown. It was going to come from a decision made in the chaos, one that would leave everyone questioning everything they thought they knew about these two warriors. And just when it seemed like the fight had settled into its final shape, the unpredictable cracked the surface once more and changed the momentum again. By the time the fourth round began, you could almost hear the collective breath-holding from every corner of the arena. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a moment neither man could escape from, and neither seemed willing to blink first. Emmett's corner had fire in their voices now, urging him to dig deep, to tap into the version of himself that had dragged his name through blood and doubt to stand among the best. Across the cage, Murphy looked like a man who knew exactly what he needed to do, but was now juggling more than just technique. He was fighting against exhaustion, against pressure, against a force that kept coming even when logic said it shouldn't. What made this round different wasn't the violence. It was the silence between the action. Every movement was now charged with meaning. Emmett pushed forward, knowing he had to reclaim the momentum. Murphy, noticeably slower on his feet, relied on timing and precision. But the snap in his shots had dulled just enough to hint that the tide might be shifting again. And then, as if scripted by fate itself, Emmett cracked Murphy with a left hook that staggered him backward. It wasn't clean, but it was enough to make the crowd rise to their feet. Emmett surged forward, smelling the shift. But as he closed the distance, ready to unleash the kind of flurry that ends fights, Murphy did something no one expected. Instead of retreating, he dropped levels and hit a double-leg takedown with a speed he hadn't shown all night. It shocked everyone, including Emmett. Murphy landed in top control, not looking for a rest, but chaining transitions, controlling wrists, smothering Emmett's hips. And for the first time in the fight, Emmett looked stuck. Not rocked, not dazed, just stuck. It was a twist no one could have predicted. Murphy out-grappling the grizzled veteran who had come to drag him into a war of attrition. When the horn sounded to end the round, both fighters rose slowly, not in showmanship, but in survival. Sweat rolled down their faces, like the last drops of resolve clinging to the edge. The final round wasn't about who wanted it more. It was about who had something left to give. Emmett stood with his hands on his hips, chest heaving, eyes locked in. Murphy adjusted his mouthpiece without breaking gaze. There was no more mystery between them. Every weapon had been shown, every layer exposed. The fifth round began, and what followed wasn't a brawl. It was a chess match under fire. Emmett threw combinations that he'd saved for this moment, landing to the body, circling to the right, throwing the overhand, just missing by inches. Murphy kept threading the needle, using feints to keep Emmett honest, digging deep into a tank that looked empty minutes earlier. Then, in the final minute, came the shot that no one saw coming. As Emmett stepped in with a right cross, Murphy slipped inside, not backward, but forward, and landed a perfectly timed right elbow over the top. It wasn't thrown with the intention to knock out, but it landed in the exact place where damage accumulates. Emmett stumbled, not down, not out, but visibly shaken. Murphy followed, not with wild punches, but with methodical accuracy, tagging Emmett with sharp hooks and knees in the clinch. The veteran stayed on his feet, swinging to the final horn, refusing to fall, refusing to fade. The crowd erupted before the decision was even read. It didn't matter who had won. Both men had given a piece of themselves in there. But when the announcer read the scores, and Murphy's name echoed across the arena, it wasn't followed by boos or shock. It was followed by something rarer, respect. Emmett nodded in approval, tapped his chest, and raised Murphy's hand himself. He knew what this night meant, not just for Murphy, but for himself. He had passed the torch, not because he had to, but because the man across from him had taken it with force, class, and skill. And just as the camera began to pan away, catching replays and slow-motion highlights, another layer unfolded. In his post-fight interview, Murphy leaned into the mic, his face bruised, his lips swollen, and with a calmness only fighters understand, he dropped a sentence that turned heads backstage. "I've been training with someone none of you expected, someone who changed everything." And, from behind the curtain, a figure stepped forward, an elite coach, thought to be aligned with another camp entirely, now standing silently behind Murphy, confirming what insiders would talk about for weeks to come. That partnership had been hidden for months. No media, no leaks, no whispers. The twist wasn't just who won. It was how Murphy got here, how calculated his journey had been, how quietly he'd assembled the tools that allowed him to weather a storm like Josh Emmett and emerge not just victorious, but transformed. The fight hadn't just revealed who was tougher. It showed who was evolving when no one was watching. And as Murphy left the cage, blood on his gloves, a fresh spotlight following his every step, the MMA world wasn't just looking at a rising contender anymore. They were looking at a man who had rewritten the expectations, flipped the narrative, and reminded everyone that in this sport, nothing is set in stone. Not even legacies,